welcome everybody, it's Karen. I've got a video today using these Farmhouse Friends background papers from Paper Rose Studio. Now, I'm just showing you quickly what they are because I just think these are fantastic for cards. There are 6 different designs, and on the front of these, they all have these meadowy pasture type scenes. But the backs have got bunnies and chicks and porches, so they could be for Easter, they could just be for spring. But today I've got a couple of cards to show you how I've used these, and I just think these are really pretty backgrounds. So my first card is going to be a full-size box card. If you've watched my videos, you've seen this before, and I'm sorry, but take a screenshot if you want for those dimensions. And so here I've got my 10 1/4 inch wide piece of, I used 110-pound cardstock, and I've cut it down to be 5 inches tall. Now I'm scoring it at a 1/2 inch in and 2 3/4 inches in from both ends. So I just rotated it there and did the same at both ends. Now I'm using acetate cross pieces today. I haven't tried this before, but I didn't want to cover up that background piece. So I'm scoring it in at a 1/4 inch in from each end. I will say I didn't think these were as sturdy as the cardstock for cross pieces, but they worked. So I've scored a 1/4 inch in from both ends, and I'm now going to fold these under in a mountain fold and just give them a good pinch. And I did that with both. Now I think that this cross piece was 1 3/4 inches tall and the other 1.5, but the height totally depends on what you want. So now I've got the stitched ovals die set, and I'm using the second largest oval to die cut my opening from my card front there. So between those middle score lines is the front, and I'm just centering that oval. Now I was showing you there's not a lot of card left at the top and the bottom once that's cut. So to fill that in, I'm using this poppy field border die, and I've just colored them with Copic markers. And I'm going to put them on the front just to reinforce that opening a little bit. Now this is the back, which is 4 3/4 inches wide by 5 inches tall, and I've trimmed that background piece down to fit onto that. And this is a second matching background that I'm going to use. Now I'm cutting off, this is just under 2 inches, I believe. It just fits inside that side piece there, so maybe it was 2.5 inches. But I just fit it in there so it didn't cross over the fold line, and I'm trimming it down now to be 5 inches tall. And I cut the right hand edge of the remaining piece to put in on this side. So this is the front of the box card, and these are the side edges that you will see from the front. So I'm gluing those down in place between those fold lines. And now I'm figuring out my poppy border and how short or wide or I need that to be. So I'm just putting a little mark there, and I will cut that off. And now I can figure out how high up or down I want that to go. And so I'm just going to make a little mark there and trim that one down. And then I can glue that directly onto the front, to the back of the front of my card. So I'm just going to glue that. I know I'm off camera a little bit there, and I'm sorry. I'm just lining up the bottom edges though, and just gluing that down, which should help to reinforce that oval opening a little bit. Now I'm folding all of these fold lines into a mountain fold. You can see that I have put some double-sided tape on the inside of those side or the end flaps there. And so now I'm taking my back piece, making sure I've got it lined up and down the right way. I've taken the release paper off the side flap, and I'm lining up my back piece. I'm just butting it up right against that fold line and making sure the top and the bottom are lined up. And then I can just fold the flap up and over and press it into place. And now I can put these cross pieces in. So I'm staggering it away from the back a little bit. I've taken the release paper off, and I have the bottom edges lined up with the card edge. And then once I've got that pressed in place, I'll fold it over to the right and give it a good burnish because the acetate kind of wants to stay back the way it was before. And now the second cross piece, I am staggering away from the first, and again, same thing, lining up the edges and then pressing it over, pressing the flap into place, and then I flip it over to the right side. And so now you want to unfold these right ends because we're going to attach those. So I'm getting them lined up. I've taken the release paper off. They're lined up along the bottom edge. And I'm going to fold my box card up right where the front starts. They're right at that window opening. And you kind of need 3 hands almost at this point, but you really just take your time and just make sure it's all nicely lined up, and then press those side flaps into place. Now on the back of the card here, I always fold it as flat as I can and make sure that that flap will fold up and over the back. If it doesn't, you may have to trim just a little piece off that back, that right hand edge of the back. You definitely want to make sure the flap will fold over nice and easily. So then you can take the release paper off and fold the flap up and over the back piece, and there you have it. So it folds down really nice and flat, this card. But as soon as you pop it up, there's just a huge amount of depth to it. And like any paper folds, you need to go back and forth a little bit till it gets used to it. Now for the front, I made a little trim using the largest and the second largest ovals. I did it from white card and just colored it in with the same green I'd used for the poppies. And I'm just gluing that in place here, just to add a bit of interest to the front. Now I've cut all these bunnies from white cardstock, and I'll have everything listed down below. But you can see I've just put a little bit of double-sided tape on the bottoms of them because they're going to attach to the acetate. So I'm staggering them onto the acetate here, just kind of spreading them out a little bit. And that one bunny that's on my desk there, I had to add that pom-pom for his tail because how can you not? So there he is up at the front looking in at everybody else. And that's a close-up look at them. So there's lots of dimension to this card, but it really does fold down quite flat. Now for the sentiment, I have die cut this Happy Mother's Day, and I colored it in with the same green, but now I wanted it to go across the top, but because I've added that oval, it needs an extra layer of card, so I just cut another shadow layer. And I've taped my sentiment in place, and now I'm just marking where the outside edge of that oval will be. And then I can trim off those end pieces and glue them to the back of that sentiment that I've done. And then that whole thing can be attached, and those end pieces will stick down onto the card front, whereas before they wouldn't have, and I was kind of worried the whole sentiment might just fall off. Now on the back, I cut a second back piece that is 4 3/4 inches wide by 5 inches tall, and that will cover my back. You don't have to do that. You could put strips of pattern paper along those seams. But there's the final card. It's just quite fun, I think, and I love that paper for it. I love the scenery it creates. So it folds flat except for the pom-pom. And it stands up beautifully. So it's really quite a fun card to give somebody. Okay, so I've got a second card to share, again using the same Farmhouse Friends backgrounds. And I was given this piece of cardstock by Paper Rose. It was an offcut. You can see it didn't cut quite right at the bottom, but I love this side, and I thought that went really well with the background. I'm using the supporting sentiment strips, and I've created the sentiment. It'll be a thank you card. And I just used a Copic marker for that background. I'm using the same bunny, the same one, and I've put the pom-pom on him again. And I'm using the wonky picket fence. And these are the stitched rectangle dies, which I used to cut out the opening. So to start this one, you need 2 pieces of 5 by 7 inch cardstock. And again, I used a 110-pound card. The back piece we don't have to do anything with. It's just going to stay nice and flat. But the front one, we're going to score it at 1/2 inch, 2.5 inches, 4.5 inches, and 6.5 inches. So that means that it's going to be 2 inches wide in between each fold. And that's kind of handy because I'm going to use that piece of pattern paper to fit, to make panels to go between, and it's 6 inches, so it's perfect. So I just trimmed each one down to be just a bit over 1 3/4 inches, and they're 5 inches tall, so they're going to just fit between all those fold lines. So I'm gluing them all down now, and I'm going to I'm going to fold these first before I die cut it, because once I've cut that rectangular opening, it's much tougher to get the folds. So I like to fold this before I die cut it. And the first and the last folds, even though I'm doing all of these as a mountain fold, they're going to end up being valley folds. But because I wanted it to go through my die cutting machine, I just folded them all in the same direction. I don't think you have to do that, but it's what I prefer to do. So I'm taking the second largest rectangle again, and I'm going to line this up on the front, but I'm actually going to slide it slightly up because I've got that fence to go at the bottom, so I don't need as much of an opening down at the bottom. So there it is, and there are the folds. Now I can fold these first and last flaps back into valley folds. Now I'm trimming down my background piece to be 5 inches tall. And from the right hand edge, I'm going to trim off a 1-inch strip. And you'll see that goes on the very right hand edge of this card base now. And I've marked in a 1/2 inch on the bottom there with a pencil. So I'm just lining up the background with that 1/2 inch mark. So I've got this nice and evenly done. And this front piece is now going to cover up those white sections. Now, I had the poppies out, so I die cut another border, and I've colored these in because I wanted something more with the fence. So I'm gluing my 2 fence sections together here, and I need these to be able to fold around this bend on the bay window part of this card. So I'm lining it up with hopefully with a score line that goes between the fence or boards themselves. So right there at the 2-inch mark, I can put a fold, and at the 4-inch is where I need the second fold to go. So it just worked out perfectly that I didn't have to, fold a fence board in half. But so once I've got those there, I can pinch them down, and now this piece will fit over the bay window and bend with it when it's bent. But I wanted the poppies to go in behind, so I'm kind of positioning them where I want them to go, and I'm lining up those score lines I've just made in the fence. I'm lining them up with the 2-inch mark and the 4-inch mark. And once I have them there, then I can just score my poppies at the 2 inches and the 4-inch mark. And then I know that they'll all line up together. And again, I'm going to fold those down. And now I can line this up with my fence. Now, I wanted a few of these poppies to come forward to the front of the fence. So you can see I'm wiggling this one through. And honestly, I just went through all of these. Some of them I cut apart so that they could pop through the fence, like that one there. I did that with a few of them. Here's another one. I'm just going in behind, and I just cut the flowers separate from the stalks. You're not going to see where you've cut it, but it was nice to have some of the poppies come forward. So once I had those there, then I could glue the little poppies down on the front. And then once that was done, I could trim off all the excess greenery. Honestly, it doesn't matter terribly if you don't get that straight, I don't think, because it's hidden behind the fence. And then I glued the fence posts to the greenery. Now I've got some double-sided tape on the left-hand edge of my base, and now I'm making sure that the wide end is at the bottom of my bay window, and just lining up the edges there and attaching that top piece to the bottom. And now I can glue my fence right down onto that bay window part. And now this is the bunny that I did. Now I cut 3 of these and stacked them up together. You can see I've only put double-sided tape on the right-hand side of that bunny. And that's because you need that flap to fit in underneath the left-hand side. So he's only attaching down on the right side there, and there's a gap on the left. So I had just positioned that bay window kind of over that white gap that we had left. So I knew that was where he needed to go, and there you go. It's really easy to pop it under. Now my sentiment I'm going to just glue to the middle section of the fence. I don't want it to glue the fence down, so that's only going to go in the middle. So I've only put glue in that middle section, and now I can stick it down. Now this is the final card. I did add in one of the little etched butterflies. I happen to have it in my stash, but I just thought it was kind of pretty. And I've fussy cut these two bunnies out, and now they came from the 12 by 12 papers, the same farmhouse background. And I just thought they were kind of cute to add on there. Definitely not needed. But that's the card. It's another fun dimensional card. It stands up. You can write on the back of it. Now it will fold really quite flat if you don't have the pom-pom tailing. The pom-pom adds another dimension to it for sure. But there's lots of room on the back to write your message. It will stand up, and I just think it's really quite a fun way to show off those papers. So thanks for stopping by, everybody. I hope you're having a great day. I'll talk to you again next time.